Will the federal government shutdown affect your Hawaii trip? And that's really the big question right now. And in this episode, we'll be answering that. We'll cover what's open right now and what's likely to be closed or limited and how it could impact your reservations and travel plans. And we'll discuss what we can learn from the last shutdown, which was in 2018, so you have a better understanding of what to expect. Welcome to Hawaii's Best, the podcast helping you plan an unforgettable Hawaii vacation with practical tips and the latest in Hawaii travel news. If you listened to the episode yesterday, I know I mentioned that I'm going to be going back to weekly episodes during the fall, during the shoulder season in Hawaii. Honestly, I woke up this morning thinking about you if you are planning a trip to Hawaii, or maybe you're in Hawaii right now, and hearing the news about the federal shutdown, I thought about those who are planning to travel to Hawaii. Hawaii during this time is a beautiful time during October. I wanted to get this episode out, and I've been researching most of the morning with up-to-date info, and I'm going to cite all of my sources. I'm not just going to give my opinions here. I will interject where necessary, but I'm going to give you facts and what is current and what we know right now. I'm going to list all that in the show notes. This is a topic that can get political pretty quickly, and I am not going to go down that route. I simply just want to report how this could and will affect anybody who is in Hawaii right now, especially those who are traveling for vacation. So if you're planning a trip right now, you have probably seen the headlines, or if not, maybe this is your news source to this, but the federal government has officially shut down. It's not the first time. We're going to talk about a little bit what 2018 was like and how we can learn from that and kind of expect what to expect because of that. So what does that mean for you and your trip? If you got tickets to, say, Pearl Harbor, or if you're hoping to catch, sunrise at Haleakalā National Park, are the national parks open or are they closed? And really the honest answer right now is, well, it depends, which is kind of frustrating. Some reports say the parks are closed. Others, like one from Politico, say that they'll stay as accessible as possible. We saw that in 2018. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we'll talk and unpack what that means. And in Hawaii News Now is reporting that the staff at Pearl Harbor walked out yesterday not even knowing if they'd be back in on October 1st, which is at the time of this recording today. But this is coming out on the 2nd. So if you're wondering which one it is, you're not alone. That's exactly what we're going to be unpacking today. We'll start with what we know for sure today as October 1st, the first day in the shutdown. We'll look at what's likely to be limited. And finally, I'll share what happened during the last shutdown in 2018 and how that impacted travel in Hawaii. To make this all easy for you, I put this in all this information condensed into a free PDF guide, and I'll include that with live links to official sources like the National Park Service, Hawaii Tourism Authority, and so you can have all the latest updates really within that guide, and you'll find that in the very first link in the show notes below, where you can grab it after this episode. So let's start with the basics of what we know right now. Well, flights are still running to Hawaii, and TSA officers and FAA staff are considered essential, thank goodness, though they're not getting paid right now, but they're still at their posts. And that means your flights to Hawaii or between the islands is going ahead as scheduled. Now, here's something to kind of keep in mind. During the 2018 shutdown, a lot of TSA officers started calling in sick because, well, they weren't getting paid. Now, when that happens in large numbers, it leaves checkpoints short-staffed and creates long lines at the airports. So this week, TSA officials told HNN, again, that's Hawaii News Now, that if the shutdown continues, travelers should be prepared for that kind of slowdown again. What about the parks and activities? And really, the good news is that state and county parks are open. So places like Diamond Head, Waimea Canyon, Iao Valley on Maui, and the Napali Coast on Kauai are all operating normally. And same goes for your hotel, restaurants, luau's, and snorkeling tours, etc. These don't rely on federal funding. The Hawaii Tourism Authority even put out a reminder that state parks, beaches, and private businesses are still open as usual. Pearl Harbor is where things get a little bit more complicated. It's been really hard to try to find a straight answer. According to HNN, the center is staffed by National Park Service, and those workers are furloughed during a shutdown. What's important to note is that the Battleship Missouri and the Bowfin Submarine Museum and the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum aren't federal. They're managed by Pacific Historic Parks, a nonprofit organization, and they've already said that they are going to remain open. Getting into the weeds just a little bit, because I know a lot of people who are in Hawaii listen to this podcast as well. So for residents who depend on benefits, Social Security, Medicare, those are all still active. They're considered essential, so payments keep going out. Interviews with AARP Hawaii, HNN reported that new applications and customer service could take longer than usual. VA medical centers are also open because they're funded in advance. Now, I want to pause here real quick because as I was doing research, I saw on HNN, they reported about 20,000 Hawaii residents would lose their Obamacare subsidies because the fiscal year ended. I've fact-checked that and I couldn't find that to be accurate. So if this affects you, this is what I found, and you can do your own research as well. The Congressional Research Service confirms that the Enhanced Affordable Care Act, ACA, subsidies, which help lower premiums, are in place through the end of 2025. I also found that to validate on the Kaiser Family Foundation, which says the same thing. So standard ACA subsidies are permanent and the temporary enhanced subsidies don't expire until December 31st, 2025. So all that to say, if you know someone is on ACA coverage, you don't need to worry, at least for my research, and I encourage you to do your own research. Finally, probably the biggest question, let's talk about the national parks. The Department of Interior's official plan says parks will stay, quote, as accessible as possible. And I'll make their PDF available also somehow below in the show notes. This is what they officially put out. They're going to remain as accessible as possible. So in practice, that means you might still be able to enter a park or walk a trail, but visitor centers, restrooms, ranger programs, and trash collections stop unless the park has fee money to keep them running. For visitors, that often means the park won't feel fully open, obviously, even if the gates aren't locked. So here's where we stand today in all of this. Flights are operating, state parks and beaches are open, nonprofit museums like Pearl Harbor are welcoming visitors, Social Security, VA services, and ACA subsidies continue, but Hawaii national parks are in a gray zone, accessible, but without the services most people expect. Other National Park Service sites in Hawaii also fall into this uncertain category. That includes Pu'uhonua o Hononau, Pu'uko'ola Heiau, Kalapapa, and the Alakahakai Trail. None of these have put out a clear shutdown notice as of now, but based on the plan, you can expect reduced or no services, just like in 2018 when some of these places were left open without staff. If you're planning to visit a wildlife refuge, the rules change a little. The Fish and Wildlife Services plan says refuges are closed unless they don't get staff for public access. That means visitor centers and lighthouses like Kilauea Point on Kauai are very likely closed. Trails that don't need staffing might still be accessible, but really don't count on any facilities there to be open. And really to understand what this might mean for you if you're traveling to Hawaii or if you're in Hawaii right now, it helps to look back at the last major shutdown in 2018 that lasted for 35 days. That's the longest in U.S. history. Back then, about 300,000 federal workers were furloughed without pay, including many in Hawaii. According to HNN, travelers noticed it most at the airports. So with few screeners showing up, security lines got longer and longer, and the whole process became more stressful. National parks were another area where the impact showed up. Hawaii's Volcanoes National Park stayed open to visitors, but services were cut. The National Park Service reported that roads were closed, ranger-led hikes and volunteer programs were canceled, and facilities weren't maintained. The Congressional Research Service later noted that parks left open without staff saw trash pileups, closed bathrooms, and even damage to cultural and natural resources. In Hawaii, Pearl Harbor also showed reduced operations while nonprofit partners kept some sites open. The uncertainty around visitor centers created confusion for many travelers, kind of what we're seeing right now. All right. So kind of take a deep breath. And, after hearing all of this, you might be wondering, what does it mean for your trip? How do you plan with these things that feel uncertain? And you're like, Brian, you just made it more confusing. I hope I didn't. But this is what is current. It is confusing. Really, the first thing to check before you go is the National Park Service and Hawaii Tourism Authority are updating their websites best as they can. So you can go to nps.gov/HI for park updates, or go to gohawaii.com for broader alerts. And, always check and monitor those during your visit or leading up to your visit to Hawaii. And second, have a backup plan. If you're hoping to visit Haleakalā or Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and the visitor centers are closed, maybe swap that day for a state park or beach. If you're on Oahu, you got Diamond Head, Kauai, you got Waimea Canyon, Maui, and, you got Iao Valley, all of those are open. The third thing to keep in mind is expect fewer services inside federal parks if you do get in. So if you find that the gates are open, but don't expect restrooms to be clean, ranger programs to be running, or trash to be collected. So all the more it's important to pack out what you bring in. The fourth thing out of 5 that I hope to clear up is book private experiences where you can. So luau's, snorkeling trips, food tours, cultural programs are all operating normally. This is another great chance to support local businesses while you're enjoying your trip. And finally, stay flexible. That's really the key. That really gets kind of the key to visiting Hawaii is be flexible. A government shutdown doesn't mean your trip to Hawaii is ruined. Most of the experiences visitors come for, the beaches, culture, food, and really the aloha spirit are still in Hawaii. You may just need to adjust if a park or visitor center isn't open the way you expected. And again, I have all of this info and with the live links for these official sites to stay up to date. You can just get that PDF in the show notes below. First link. And if you found this information helpful, would love it if you just took a few seconds and left a review if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, or if you're on Spotify, just go ahead and leave a rating. Take you a couple seconds to do that. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you for listening. And until next time, next Wednesday, unless something else comes up, I will see you then. And until then, live with aloha. Mahalo for listening to this episode of Hawaii's Best. To stay up to date on future episodes, hit follow on your podcast app. Hawaii's Best is a production of Shorebreak Media Group with editing by Easy Podcast Solutions and music courtesy of our friends Stick Figure.